All right, welcome to another episode of Stand Tall. We are now in Chapter 5 of The Art of War. It is December 11th. Chapter 5 is entitled Energy, which I think is what a lot of us need here in these cold winter months. So, verse 1. The control of a large force is the same principle as the control of a few men. It is merely a question of dividing up their numbers. Interesting. I was actually thinking about this just last night in regards to small businesses and large businesses. I was watching a podcast on YouTube in regards to the Chinese economy, and then I started thinking about the difference in small businesses and big businesses. I was also having some troubles with some clients. They ended up going with a larger business to do a panel change out because I guess the larger business has more resources, so they could undercut me by about $1,000. Um, it wasn't really clear what the bigger business was giving them as far as value is concerned versus what I would have given them, but that's neither here nor there. So what is interesting though is the fact that it is kind of the same principles for many people or few people, and so that's why scaling is important. So let's go over to the alternate translation. This chapter 5 is entitled Force. Wang Chi remarks before we begin that force means shifts in accumulated energy or momentum. Skillful warriors are able to allow force of momentum to seize victory for them without exerting their strength. Master Sun says, governing a large number as though governing a small number is a matter of division into groups. Battling a large number as though battling a small number is a matter of forms and calls. Cao Cao says that forms and calls refer to the formations and signals used to dispose troops and coordinate movements. So regardless of whether it's a big army or a small army that you're controlling or battling against, it's all about how you speak to your army, how you divide up your resources. Just like chapter 2, let's go back because that was 2. Chapter 5, verse 2. Fighting with a large army under your command is no wise different from fighting with a small one. It is merely a question of instituting signs and signals. So what they're saying is no matter what, whether you're fighting a big one or a small one, it's all about how you communicate. How is that energy dispersed? All right, so now we like to go over to the Daily Stoic by Ryan Holiday and Stephen Hanselman. Let's see what they have for December 11th. Dignity and bravery. As Cicero says, we hate gladiators if they are quick to save their lives by any means. We favor them if they show contempt for their lives. Seneca, On Tranquility of Mind, 11.4b. Lyndon Johnson's college classmates used to tell an embarrassing story about him. Johnson apparently had a big mouth and felt he had to constantly dominate and intimidate others. LBJ. There's a good time suck about him. Check it out and then you'll know why I'm laughing about Big Mouth. Yet his biographer, Roberto Caro, makes it clear that when someone stood up to young Lyndon, he proved himself to be a complete coward. In one instance, during an argument over a poker game, instead of fighting, Johnson threw himself on a bed and began kicking his feet in the air with a frantic, windmilling motion like a girl, he shouted. He shouted, "If you hit me, I'll kick you. If you hit me, I'll kick you." Later in his life, Johnson also worked extremely hard to avoid serving in World War II and lived it up in California while other soldiers fought and died abroad. He later claimed to be a war hero. It was one of his most shameful lies. We do not need to disregard our physical safety or engage in wanton acts of violence to be brave, but nobody respects a coward. Nobody likes a shirker of duty. Nobody admires a person who puts too high a price for their own comfort and needs. That's the irony of cowardice. It's aimed at self-protection, but it creates shameful secrets. Self-preservation is hardly worth it because of everything it costs in return. Be brave. Be dignified. Those are strong closing words. You know, whether it's a small matter or a big matter, right? Whether it's a small emotion or a big emotion, you've got to be brave, you've got to be dignified, right? Because how you handle those, right? The motions and the signals that Sun Tzu talks about, that is what ultimately leads to the outcome. Is that going to be something that we're ashamed of down the road, or is that something that we're going to be proud of? And that all depends on how we handle it.